Oh, from heavy to high spirits, Jerry Garcia's childhood. Jerry Garcia was the jovial, witty, and warm lead singer of the Grateful Dead. You can see his poster here behind me. On the surface, he took himself lightly and had nothing like a heavy life. But this, I will argue, was a learned trait. He had to overcome a heavy childhood in order to learn how to smile. Garcia's first wife later commented that his childhood was characterized by loss, utter loss. What Garcia went through in his childhood was nothing like that of a Dickensian character, a refugee, a Holocaust survivor, or what have you. Nevertheless, in his own way, Jerry lived a tragic life, ending as it did at the young age of 53. Brent Wood, in his book The Tragic Odes of Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, says that Jerry embodied the classic juxtaposition of tragedy and comedy. To this, however, Sean Swagerman responds that the comic frame even obscures the tragedy in Jerry's life. Swagerman does not look at Garcia's childhood, but I think that too supports Swagerman's emphasis on the role of comedy in Garcia's life, from childhood to death. I will look today at three heavy incidents from Garcia's childhood, which he learned how to weather with levity. Born on August 1st, 1942, in San Francisco, Cherry Garcia's childhood began in a musical home, unsurprisingly. His father, Joe, was a jazz musician who emigrated to California from Spain after World War I. Joe was financially well off and led popular big band orchestras. But in 1935, after the Musicians Union ostracized him for allowing players in his band to play for free, Joe opened a bar named Garcia's at the base of the newly constructed Bay Bridge. His wife, Ruth, worked alongside him until their first son, Tiff, was born in 1937. Their second child, Jerry, was named after Jerome Kern, Joe's favorite musician, who brought bright songs to Broadway and Hollywood musicals such as Showboat in 1927. The Garcias also had a happy home. By all accounts, Joe was a good father, and Jerry looked to him as a protector. Jerry remembered when, as a toddler, he was thrown into a pool by a drunk man. His father rescued him and then punched out the drunk man. Joe worked long and hard at the bar, but did not neglect the family. In 1945, when Jerry was only 3, they built a summer house in Lompico, south of San Francisco. But it was here, at the summer house, that Jerry's childhood began to get heavy. When Jerry was 4, he and his brother Tiff were tasked with chopping firewood. Being kids, they turned the task into a game. He would put a piece of wood down, take his hand away, and I would chop, recalled Tiff. We got into a rhythm, him pushing the sticks with his finger, and wham, I hit his finger. It wasn't cut clean off, but we couldn't get him to surgery fast enough, and so they had to amputate it. It was shocking initially. The doctor first assured Jerry that his finger was healing nicely, concealing the truth of the matter. And that was the worst part, Jerry says. When the bandage came off, oh my God, my finger's gone. But even in this episode, we can see a defining characteristic of Jerry Garcia. But after that, it was okay. Because as a kid, if you had a few little things that make you different, it's a good score. So I got a lot of mileage out of having a missing finger when I was a kid. Even at 4 years old, he had the ability to find something positive, even humorous, in disaster. But the next event in his life was even more traumatic. And although it would take longer for him to face it, Jerry would eventually find a way to get the better of this one. In August 1947, just before Jerry started kindergarten, he and his parents went on vacation along the Trinity River in Northern California. While Jerry and his mother set up camp, his father went fishing, slipped on a rock, and drowned in the raging waters. Jerry always claimed to have witnessed his father's drowning, even drawing sketches of it. But contemporary reports do not place him on the scene. Nevertheless, the loss of his father, his protector, naturally had a great impact on him. In a 1984 interview, he remarked that it emotionally crippled him for a long time. I couldn't even stand to hear about it until I was about 10 or 11. The effect it had on me was really crushing, maybe because it affected my mother a lot, and I sensed that. And also, it was something I wasn't allowed to participate in. And I think now that was the real problem. They tried to protect me from it. That was the reason I was sent to live with my grandparents after my father died. Jerry showed throughout his life a remarkable ability to overcome tragedy. In this case, however, the loss of his father was made all the worse because of his mother's inability to cope with it. His mother, Ruth, tried to protect him from her pain by sending him to live with her parents, the Cliffords. His grandparents, Jerry later said, were an odd couple. I mean, really odd. His grandfather was, quote, dumb and, quote, so dull, while his grandmother was a leader in the laundry workers union and had a boyfriend on the side. But besides the dullness of his new environment, it was the feeling of abandonment that Jerry had to confront. The Cliffords lived only a few blocks away from his mother, but he saw her only on the weekends. Because of his frequent asthma flare ups, he would be kept in bed for a week or two to recover. In one instance, his mother visited him, but left before Jerry was ready for her to go. There's this image of him looking out the window as she leaves, commented his first wife, Sarah Rupenthal, years later, and having a massive asthma attack, making that connection between the abandonment and the illness. Before he was old enough to understand psychology, Jerry learned how to cope with tragedy. It dawned on him at the age of 6 while watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein that comedy could dispel dark feelings. In a 1995 interview, Jerry said the movie scared him when he first saw it, but that fear also fascinated him. I think there was some desire on my part to embrace that, to not let that control me. And the way to do that, he continued, was through humor. It's a smart strategy to get by in life. If you're not powerful, if you're not huge, if you're not muscular, if intimidation is too much work for you, it works good at disarming powerful adversaries. Also, while he lay in bed during asthma episodes, he would devour the horror and dark fantasy of EC comics, in particular, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and Haunt of Fear. As he did while watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, he confronted the fear and thus disarmed its power over him. Marshall Leicester, Jerry's childhood friend, said that Jerry embraced, quote, that old Mad Magazine satirical outlook that was so liberating for American kids in the 1950s, end quote. At just 6 years old, Jerry recognized the great power of levity when facing horrific situations, such as the PTSD from losing your finger, losing your father, and effectively losing your mother. Jerry may have landed on this realization because his grandparents allowed him to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. This sort of freedom defined his life, led him to be a creative and independent thinker. But when he was 11, he lost that independence. His mother remarried and decided to take a greater role in her son's anarchic life. She moved her reunited family to Menlo Park, 30 miles south of San Francisco. Ruth Garcia, writes Jerry's biographer Sandy Troy, may have inadvertently guaranteed Jerry's future as a nonconformist. Jerry admitted later, I was being a kid in San Francisco. I became a hoodlum in Menlo Park. He refused to conform to his mother's wishes and his teachers as well. Although a bright and inquisitive youth, he had to repeat 8th grade because he refused to put in any effort toward his assignments. I suggest that this rebellion was a result of his penchant for ignoring those things that made him uncomfortable, which he had been doing since he was 4. Things were worse in high school, so his mother moved him yet again to the small town of Cazadero, 80 miles north of San Francisco. Jerry rebelled. He also discovered marijuana, another coping mechanism. Refusing to conform, he quit school altogether in his junior year. Not fitting in at home or at school, he made a surprising decision for such a nonconformist. He joined the military. I wanted to just be someplace completely different, he said in a famous interview with Rolling Stone in 1972. Home wasn't working out really for me, and school was ridiculous. I had to do something. At that time, the only really available alternative was to join the army, so I did that. But he was clearly unsuited for the army. He did not take his duties seriously, and he was discharged in late 1960. These are his discharge papers on the screen. He returned to an aimless life in Palo Alto, spending his days reading, writing, playing and listening to music, and going to parties, right where he wanted to be. My final 2 examples come from the end of his childhood, when he began to apply the lessons that he had acquired as a boy into his adult life. On February 20, 1961, he was in a car accident that killed his friend, Paul Spiegel. It was a traumatic event that seemed to really affect him, says his girlfriend at the time, Charlotte Daigle, that Paul Spiegel had died in his place. Apparently, Jerry had traded places with him in the car right before the crash. Jerry said in retrospect, that's where my life began. Before then, I was always living at less than capacity. I was idling. That was the slingshot for the rest of my life. It was like a second chance. Then I got serious. But by serious, he did not mean somber and sad, but rather he became determined to live more like Abbott and Costello. Although Jerry continued to live like a child until the day he died, One might point to this car accident as an end to his childhood. I have tried to emphasize how he used humor to navigate hardship. I would like to reinforce this in my final anecdote from when he was 20 years old. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Jerry, like everyone else, expected a nuclear confrontation with the USSR at any moment. On October 27, Black Saturday, instead of hiding away in a fallout shelter, Jerry and his friend Brigid Meyer walked up a hillside behind the chateau to watch the end of the world. The message couldn't have been less ambiguous, David Brown writes of Jerry's attitude when faced with impending doomsday. It was best to live in the moment, do whatever one wanted, and find pleasure in it because that moment could be taken away at any time. Jerry adopted this view early in his childhood. He lost a finger at 4, his father and his mother, in a way, at 5. He was seen as a non-entity by his grandparents until 11. When his mother tried to reassert her parental control over Jerry, he rebelled. And he may have exhibited a rebellious streak, but he also found a playful way to navigate the vicissitudes of his heavy childhood. And this approach to life, as much as his music, endeared him to millions of fans while he was alive and continues to do so 30 years after his death. Thank you.